Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me wherever you are joining me. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. And if you're joining me on the YouTube channel, you know what to do. You need to like, you need to subscribe. Trying to get to, a next level. And I think this year, as we start to get into football season, it's usually when I start to pick up a lot more followers. It's weird though. When I first started on my YouTube channel, it really was actually the off season because I was doing a lot of tutorials, and I picked up a lot of followers during the off season, when we were out of football season. So, but then once the pandemic hit during football season, I started to kind of pick up that second wave. But regardless, I know you guys are out there. I know that you just want great content, and I want to continue to bring you great content. Shout out to the people listening or watching on Twitter. Shout out to the people listening or watching on Facebook. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. That is Talk Spicy. You'll see the little microphone with the flame. Talk Spicy with Coach Gene Clemens. Beyonce has dropped her new album. It is Act One Renaissance. The thought process of Act One makes me believe that there's another album coming. I don't know if it's going to be an album we get soon or it's an album we're going to get sometime in the future. But Act One tells me that there should be an Act Two. What will be interesting is if Act One is a certain type of genre, and then Act Two is a different type of genre. I'll be looking forward to that. This is a dance album. I think we all had a thought process. We had a reason to believe that this new album would be a dance album, and we have proof. I mean, it is essentially every song is a dance song. And it's not bad. It's not a bad song. It's not a bad album. I love a lot of the songs. I feel about this new album the same way I felt about Drake's new album, though. I think people out there, maybe even you, some of you are going to look at this album and you're going to be like, I don't know. Initially, right? Initially, because a lot of the hate for Drake's new album was that I just don't really want to listen to this. This isn't something I can just. But when you started to hear that Drake song, those Drake songs in particular areas, you're like, oh, I see what it is. This was made to be played here. It was made to be played there. I feel the same way about this Beyonce album on first listen. It took me about 3 listens to kind of gauge where the Drake album was supposed to lay. But on this album, I think this album on first listen tells me we're going to hear this everywhere. People need to hear some upbeat, lively. Like it's not all like fast music, but it definitely all has a beat. And she's talking her stuff on there, man. I was listening and it was like, I don't know, like 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep at some point. I was like, oh, right, that new Beyonce's out. Let me go and listen to that. So that's what I did. It's a great album. And I love when artists take chances. Now, is this really a chance for Beyonce? Is this really a risk for Beyonce? I would say in the greater scale, no, because Beyonce has a net. She has a safety net. It's called $1 billion. Not just Jay-Z's money, not just his $1 billion worth, but her $1 billion worth. And she might not actually be a billionaire yet, but she's on the way. So the idea, right? The idea of her stepping out and kind of not doing a traditional hip hop R&B pop album and doing something that really does fall more in the dance realm is ambitious. It steps out of what we know her for specifically. Now, when you listen to the album, you're going to hear all of those familiar Beyonce things, but it is a risk because it might not be well received. That's okay. She has a net. And that brings me to my other point is, not everybody gets an opportunity to work or to take risk because they know they don't have a net underneath them, right? So I want to talk. I hear a lot of times people will, talk about how they came up, how they were able to achieve. And a lot of times they don't talk about all of the factors that played a role in how they achieved. For instance, there's this reporter who tends to always talk about how she was able to overcome some type of adversity to get to where she is today. Being a reporter in a male-dominated world, being considered, or being looked at for her beauty instead of her, her knowledge or her acumen. We've heard those stories before. How she had to take, XYZ job that didn't pay a lot, but she did it because she loved it and she knew there was a goal in mind. And outside of that one example, you've heard lots of people talk about that examples. I'm, to a certain extent, one of those examples, but I'll explain my situation differently. The thing that they never talk about is, why were they able to take that job that didn't pay a lot of money? Why were they able to go and take those trips that they had to pay for themselves in order to cover things, because that's what they were into, because that's what they wanted to do with their life? Like, what made that possible? They rarely ever talk about that. And what we normally find when you dig a little deeper is that there was somebody in the background that allowed them to take those jobs, to pay those expenses, and still be able to live. I don't know if this is true or not, because I'll never know. This is only just my thought process on it. I believe wholeheartedly that I could be in two different worlds full time had I made different decisions coming out of college. The first one is, I believe that I could be a Division I coach. Head coach, I don't know, but in Division I football, absolutely. I believe that I could be a Division I coach, not because of my knowledge or anything like that. It actually is much more depressing than that. Because a lot of times, becoming a Division I coach in a sport is predicated on timing and the people that you know. The only way to know people is to take jobs that you can't actually afford to take. Many of the jobs, when you're coming up the ranks, don't pay any money. Outside of the head coach and possibly a coordinator, no other position on Division III and Division II staffs or NAIA staffs are paying you a living wage. Not a one. None of those jobs are going to pay you something where you can live comfortably as an adult if you're not the head coach or the coordinators. If you don't believe me, put it in the comments. Leave a note in the comments. So for me, I don't get to work with a net. I don't have someone who can, I didn't have someone who could float me for a few months if I didn't have any money, who could afford to support me. to pay my rent, to give me money when I needed to take flights places. I didn't have that safety net. Not if I wanted to chase that dream. So I had to adjust. My adjustment was I went to work at a school, coached at a prep school, made a living wage. Here's the byproduct of that. Once you start making a living wage, it becomes harder and harder to go back to a situation where you're not making any money, or at least not enough money to support yourself. Now it's a catch-22. So a couple of years into teaching, into coaching at the high school range, at the high school level, the prep level, I took a job in college. I had saved enough money to be able to support myself for a couple of years, barely. And I took a job at a college, making no money. I believe I was making $4,000 a year, and they gave me room, and I had a lunch plan, a meal plan and a room. No insurance, right? That $4,000 wasn't paid to me like over. It was paid to me throughout the school year. It wasn't even like, hey, here's $4,000. It was like, here's a check for whatever, $100 and something, whatever it was, a couple $100 a month. It was awful. I had to find ways to make a little bit of money on the side. So I did what I do. I wrote for the local newspaper to make some extra, I did string work for the local newspaper. That college opportunity then allowed me to get my master's degree and college experience. The staff that I was on after my first year, the head coach took another job at a Division II school in North Carolina. He took with him the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinator. Took them with him. I didn't go. Why? They didn't have my program there. He said, hey, stay put. So then when my appointment was up, I was looking for jobs, and all the jobs that I was finding were other jobs where I made money that wasn't a living wage. Now, I just told you I can't afford to live like this anymore. I've depleted all the savings that I had. And so I couldn't take that $18,000 a year job as a receivers coach or as a tight ends coach or as a defensive line coach. I couldn't take that $10,000 restricted earnings job. What was I left to do? Go back to the working area, because I had no safety net. I was walking the tightrope with no safety net. If I fail, I'm dead. There are other people who have been able to make meteoric rises up the ladder, and they've done so because they were able to take jobs that they made no money at. When you hear these stories of these 20-something-year-olds getting like position coaching jobs in college or in the pros, I guarantee you there's a stipulation that came with that. Either they were pros or they are family members of other coaches. Or family members, they have family members that have enough money to support them. I knew a coach whose parents paid for him to live until he was like 28 years old, until he finally got a job in the coaching world that would pay him a significant amount of money. How can I ever compete with that? I can't, because I don't have a support structure behind me that could allow me to just gallivant or do jobs where I'm not getting paid almost to 30 years old. I didn't have that. I can't live that life. This is not hate, by the way. It's awesome that he had that, but it makes it different. I can't really listen to him talk about how he had it rough and how he had to persevere. Because at any point in time, if he failed, there was a safety net. Walking this tightrope with no safety net is a different level of pressure. It's a different level of anxiety. When you're walking these tightropes with no net, with no support system, life is different. So I give applause to anybody, man, woman, who have reached their dreams. Everybody in the media who has reached that dream, who has been able to reach that dream, I applaud them. But I have just a little bit more love in my heart for the ones who did it with no net. For the ones that were able to thug it without any support system, knowing that if they didn't get it done, it was all the way back to square zero, and not just, hey, what am I going to do now? It's, hey, how am I going to eat? How am I going to pay my rent? For those who at times had to not pay the rent for half the month because they didn't have it, who had to work some side jobs on top of the job they were working in order to, who didn't have it in the pocket to just say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, grandma, hey, wife, hey, husband, because I see a lot of that too. And again, it's not a diss. It's a salute to you guys for having that. But for those who don't have it, who have to not just show how good they are, but also navigate the waters of professions, coaching, and media that have super low floors. Anybody can get into coaching. Anybody can get into media. So they pay you nothing. There's no ceiling. You can make whatever it is you can get to. There's no ceiling, but the floor is so low that it welcomes everyone in. And when you welcome everyone in, you don't have to pay them. You don't have to pay them. I hear about coaches taking jobs. Hey, I'm the new wide receivers coach at XYZ University. And I'm like, I wonder if that dude's married. I hear about people, oh, I'm the new weekend sports anchor at W blah, blah, blah. And I go, I wonder if they have 3 or 4 roommates. Because you got to make it work some kind of way, right? You take these jobs because these jobs are your dreams, but these jobs don't pay. And you're betting on yourself. Hey, I'm going to take this job that doesn't pay me a lot because I believe in myself, and I know when I do a good job here, other opportunities are going to open. So you roll the dice. But life is hard. It's even more difficult when you don't have the safety net. So shout out to all of those people out there who have made that dream a reality. But a special salute to those who've done it without that safety net back there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Do this thing a few times a week. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. If you're joining me on the YouTube channel, make sure you like, subscribe. If you're joining me on Spotify, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. 5 stars, we need you. Until next time, peace.